The Brothers. Towers crumbled. A thunderclap struck by overhead. The night sky turned a deep blood red along the horizon, and Isaiah knew, more than ever, he had failed.
So much for my go-with-the-gut approach.
Despite all his efforts, and all his compromises, the Seeress's prophecy of apocalypse was coming true not 20 yards from where he stood. Up the broad stairs, below the imposing doors of the Tribunal, a power transfer was taking place he had no hope of stopping. Maroon and black mist poured off the stones, blistering, broiling, seeping into Joseph through his eyes, ears, mouth, and wounds, mutating what was once the body of Mason Royans further into a lumbering beast undeserving of the flesh it had stolen. Manic, shuddering, drunk on the power of the brothers, Joseph shrieked,
"It's endless! Absolutely endless!"
The transfer! How strong is the flow? Are there any breaks? Could I? No. Come on, you old fool. Something has to work.
Isaiah was running on pure instinct, dying to act but unable to, frozen in place by the sheer power radiating off the stones. It was the same story with Hannah, Bennett, and Felix. Even Chloe, who'd joined them on the stairs just before the transfer began, was fighting to stay upright.
And so, with the damnation of the blinding light,
Joseph said with an exultant crescendo,
for the countless wasted lives that meant nothing, the nightmare is finally over. We, the Nameless, shall create a new order and send this universe into complete, peaceful darkness.
He finished and hung his head, like some of the more dramatic priests and poets Isaiah had witnessed over the ages. There was a scream from within the monster, a wide-eyed release of pain and ecstasy, as Joseph's shoulders jutted upward, as though hoisted by a rope and pulley. Two bone spikes of deep gray rose from within his shoulder blades and into the air, where jagged, barbed vines broke away, outstretching, weaving around one another, becoming mangled wings curling into themselves like writhing newborns. Gradually, they drew out, crackling, finding their full breadth. Finalizing his transformation, the trunks opened with sharp, violent sighs, like immense blades scraped over sharpening stones, completing an over 40-foot wingspan. The smaller archfiend danced through the sky, chanting,
"For the beast! For the beast! For the beast!"
blissfully unaware of Joseph's true intentions, simply happy their side seemed to be winning. The deed was done. All appeared over, for a moment at least. Then, as Joseph stood proudly, a monolith to sin, the ground began to still. The building behind him ceased collapsing. The stars returned to the sky, twinkling with hope-giving light. Most importantly of all, Joseph, or whatever the Nameless had become, stopped growing.
"This can't be,"
the monster grunted as the supply of mist from the stones diminished. The smooth black finish on their faces returned. Reality gained its composure. The pressure on Isaiah's body subsided. Like a train braking, the transfer was gradually coming to a halt. Joseph let out a panicked scream.
No! No! Where is it?
Finish the transfer! Chloe called from below, struggling to climb the steps. Do it! Bring us peace!
The brothers resist.
Joseph cradled the stones, willing them back to life like cold infants in his arms.
They will not open. It must have been Isaiah. He and his Cretans did something to Milou.
We didn't do squat to your rock collection,
Isaiah shouted back. Chloe muttered to herself, Resist you? Why? She then gasped, shouting above, Of course! It's Gehenna, my love! The brothers wish to go home, where the monarchs birthed them and fed them, where their strength will be amplified. That's where they will open for you.
No kidding? Whoa, hallelujah! I love second chances.
Isaiah's gut then dropped.
Then again, if Joseph can shift while on Trivium, he might be able to shift off of Trivium. How the heck did he do that, by the way?
At first, the monstrosity was placid, a statue unmoved. His red eyes drifted to the lifeless stones in his arms.
They wish. They wish.
He bellowed.
We've given them everything they've wished. We heard their voices. We did as they asked. They are together in our arms. And once again, we are a servant. The power is deserved. Ours. Where is it?
You have it, my love, Chloe shouted. They gave you a taste of their strength so that you may get them home safely. Use it, quickly. Their trust will not be infinite. She spoke with a stern tone, telling her kid not to break their fancy new toy. Joseph's spine arched forward, shadowing his face and the stones. The wings folded into a gray canopy above. Static shocks of orange lightning coursed around his cloak and claws. The black and red mist filtered out of him, collecting and condensing. Soon the cloud without shape became a rotating sphere, swirling, expanding. He released a deafening roar, shaking his head.
We brought them together. We obeyed. It should be ours.
The sphere turned opaque, swelling with raw power, like a pufferfish the size of a house. Isaiah had never seen such a pure collection of Eve, and was willing to bet the thing was unstable.
No one could control something so reckless.
Chloe apparently felt the same way, muttering the word fool before jumping into the air, generating a Malos bubble around herself, and getting the hell out of there.
Not a bad idea!
Isaiah followed her lead, managing to nab Hannah, Felix, Bennett, and a good chunk of the road beneath them in an apple-green Malos orb of his own. They launched away from the Tribunal as fast as Isaiah could carry them, until he couldn't any longer, and the orb collapsed, spewing the team onto asphalt several blocks away in a clean, modest Dolorosian block, dominated by yellow and orange housing.
Sorry for the landing, all.
He took cover against the closest wall. The sound of the abyss bomb had grown to something akin to thousands of screeching truck brakes overlapping, getting higher and tighter, like a prodigious bottle being filled dangerously close to the top. The old Medolian dared to peer around the corner and spotted the tribunal stairs through a gap between complexes, just in time to witness the ghostly ball of abyss start to pitch from side to side, like a wobbling top.
Oh, no!
Isaiah tackled Bennett and Felix to the same ground they'd just picked themselves up from.
Get down!
With an ear-splitting explosion, the bomb detonated, sending red and black mist across the sky. The shrill cries of Archfiend burning away filled the air. Foundations and walls crumbled, sending quakes crashing through surrounding neighborhoods. Somehow, the structure protecting Isaiah and the others stood, and when the dark eve faded, the neighborhood descended into a post-shock quiet. Isaiah could no longer feel the energy of the Ailey clan.
The ones not caught in the blast must have run off.
He also could not sense Chloe, though something told him she was around. Creeping out to find a vantage point to survey the damage, Isaiah nearly lost his breath. It looked as though a fire had cleared out 5 or 6 blocks of the Trivium landscape, leaving only lifeless ash. Across the barren campus, the tribunal lay torn open. A laser precision sphere was cut from all matter in the steps, and most of the central hall, where the winged creature who'd caused the destruction hovered at its center.
So that's what he plans to do to the universe.
With a voice powerful enough to reach all of Trivium, or at least anyone still around to hear it, Joseph spoke.
You see, Isaiah, that was only a portion.
He gestured, orating like a 20th century Earth dictator, the likes of which Isaiah had never been fond of.
What's he waiting for? If he can shift off planet, he could do it now and end this. Unless...
Why do you fight us?
Joseph asked.
We fight for you, for everyone, to end pain. Do you enjoy never-ending struggle? The back and forth, worshipping, groveling? No creature is above another. Existence bastardizes us all.
Yep, looks like he can't shift. Either the abyss is unbalancing him so bad he can't open an Eve gate, or he just used up a little too much power with that hissy fit bomb.
Joseph drifted away from the wreckage of the tribunal steps and soared over the campus, seemingly searching for something or someone.
You know you can't win this, Isaiah. Come out. End this with dignity.
He can't sense us either? Well, I'll be. Might be a silver lining trying to shine through here after all.
Isaiah used the chance, getting the attention of Hannah, Bennett, and Felix, currently huddled in the shadows of a nearby multi-dwelling structure. Daring only the softest of whispers, he laid out a plan. Bennett and Felix would go right, Hannah would go left, and he would go up the middle. Hopefully, they could get the drop on Joseph from 3 sides, and maybe,
just maybe,
snag one of the stones before he got bored and headed to the ebb rings to return to Earth.
Luckily, he's a cocky one.
Bennett and Felix darted to the right, into the darkness of a greasy alley behind a couple of kitchens, leaving Isaiah to question every move he'd ever made in his entire life, however long that was. "Got one more joke for the road?" a voice asked, both coarse and soft. Isaiah turned to Hannah, who gave him a playful punch to the jaw.
Right now, I feel as if I'll never tell another one of those,
he said. Don't be so dramatic. You will, Hannah said. Laughter finds a way in, even when you don't want it to. Remember? She gave him a steady pat on the back and a fear-ending smile before starting on her own mission to the left.
Who told you that drivel?
Isaiah asked, knowing the answer. Just some nut. She turned for a wink, then was gone. Isaiah chuckled to himself, now alone, staring down the middle route, with no idea how any of this was going to turn out, and with little hope in his heart. If Ileana was at all correct, nothing he could do would affect the coming end.
Doesn't mean I won't try, just stinks.
He started out as Joseph's voice rolled over the city, echoing down every walkway, filling each passage with his forceful, wretched words.
You wouldn't believe the things we can do with the abyss. It's so much more than we ever dreamed. The brothers are showing us how to unlock it. They know everything, even about you, Isaiah, and your team. Yes, your precious humans, Barker and Hunter. We know why you chose them. We know your plan, pathetic as it was.
Joseph's sick laugh crept into Isaiah's ears as the Medolian hurried without using his cane for support, knowing it would make too much noise. Up a tight cobblestone path, he slipped between brown brick buildings, trying to focus on anything other than his aching knees. Joseph continued.
Clan Ailey, where have you gone? Did we frighten you away? You have nothing to fear. The brothers are here to erase all your pain. The war is no longer necessary for peace.
Isaiah spotted a walkway under a stone bridge arch intersecting Joseph's path. Creeping the rest of the way, the monster was revealed through occasional gaps in the awning. Soon Isaiah was tucked below him. 60 or so feet up, Joseph hovered, luckily still talking, distracting himself.
Keep it going. Tell us how great you are.
Once in position, with his cane pressed firmly into the ground, Isaiah put all his weight on top, planning to launch himself like a circus performer from a cannon.
Piece of cake, just like the mechanical bull in Fort Worth.
He had no idea if his teammates were in position or not, but it was now or never. Unable to kiss his own ass goodbye, and with no one else around to do it, Isaiah tapped the green notebook in his chest pocket for good luck and hoped for the best. But he never got the chance to move. In the blink of an eye, a Malos orb the size of a honeydew crashed into his temple, exploding on impact, sending him sprawling. He spun to defend, but found no one there.
Not now! We were so close!
Another orb appeared behind him. Bam! Then another on his right, like a stone shot from a sling. Bam!
Ah! Darn it! Chloe! What is this?
Malos orbs were popping up all around like fireworks, and the old Medolian couldn't keep up. Isaiah liked dirty fighting as much as the next guy, but this was well beyond underhanded. This was rotten. The fight was over before it began, as blunt orbs jabbed his cranium, neck, and torso, until all were tender and cracking. He then felt something small and sharp touch the base of his spine and press forward. Isaiah's breath was stolen when a blade infused with Malos ripped through his vertebrae and ribs, crunching, pushing its way forward, feeling like billions of tiny, sub-zero needles had just entered his body.
Boy, I always knew she was fast. But wow.
Peering down at the rusty cutlass blade sticking more than a foot out of his abdomen, he felt a chill course through the rest of his body. Isaiah's knees buckled, and he tried to drop, but was left dangling on the blade, like a hunk of beef on a kebab, bleeding what was essentially saline solution.
This is bad. Oh no.
He fought to move, partially paralyzed, only able to peer over his left shoulder at Chloe, looming with animus. She whispered. This time, you don't stop the end.
I can't believe... Why?
Isaiah asked, his heart breaking just from the look in her eyes. Chloe leaned close. Because my beloved and I are the only ones who understand what's really at stake. Because you think our life is a gift, a privilege. Because you're sick. But don't worry. We're going to cure every ailment. What we're doing is a favor. For creatures like you, most of all.
By killing everyone? Chloe.
No, it's not death. It's erasure. Nothing is lost if nothing remembers. Chloe then lifted her head and called to Joseph. I have him, my love. It's over. Which is exactly how it felt, watching the winged horror glide into the courtyard and land with a colossal thud.
Well done,
Joseph called, stomping over, sniffing rapidly, like a muffled machine gun, then cackling with what could only be described as glee.
Medolian blood. Such a rare, sweet smell. How long we've dreamed of Isaiah's death. Oh, to hear the tale that the deed had been done by a soul of nobility. But now, to know we are the one who will do it. It might give us jubilee if we'd not diverted so far down the lower shades. This is what those of Earth and Highwind alike call them. Yes, lower.
Sounding like an appropriate title to me,
Isaiah said, coughing up his lifeblood. The wound needed to close soon, or he would drain out and fade. We don't have time for games. Kill him fast, my love, Chloe snapped. Then we will take an Ebgate to Gehenna and complete our task.
The task is completed. With Isaiah finished, there are none who could stop us.
Joseph's mangled face twisted into a smile.
Why can we not enjoy these moments before ending the light of the cosmos?
Because creatures out there are in pain. Every moment we wait is another of agony for countless others. Have the brothers in the abyss blinded you to that?
Chloe demanded. Joseph released a cry more akin to a crack of thunder than a voice of flesh and bone.
You know nothing. The brothers have waited eons for this day. They will wait a few minutes longer.
He then set his sights on Isaiah.
The Madolian responsible for so much misery will be tried and judged and executed.
Sounds like the jury's in,
Isaiah said, growing weaker every second. A shadow fell over him as Joseph approached. A long claw was laid out, dripping black and red smoke. Odious wrath danced up and down the jagged blade.
How does he plead?
Joseph asked.
I don't,
Isaiah responded, using the last of his energy. Joseph grunted and chuckled.
Wonderful final words.
The claw rose above his head, lingered, and came down. Just before it impaled Isaiah's skull, a blue streak impacted with the winged beast like a demolition ball, sending Joseph and it soaring across the street. The black and blue shapes collided with the unearthed bank and trust on the far corner, a rustic cherry-red building with segments plated in solid gold.
All stolen from Earth.
The lobby imploded, revealing abandoned second-floor offices. A gigantic orb of black glass suspended from the ceiling was knocked loose and exploded among the rubble with a blast of razor-sharp shards. In the remnants of the bank, a mound of wreckage moved aside, and Hannah rose into view.
My savior!
She coughed on dust and brushed herself off, facing the demon crawling out from under a shattered support beam. Joe, we gotta have a talk.
General!
Joseph cried, dropping the support beam, shaking off the last bits of splintered wood and dust like a wet hound.
Well done. Even now, a pathetic, forgotten war hero, you don't disappoint. We felt your eve, by the way. We see how much grief you carry. We know how broken the great Hannah of Cross Station has become, desperately grasping to her elixir of healing. Yet there's never enough of it, is there? Is that why you fight now? To find purpose in a meaningless life? If so, tell us.
The demon spread his wings, looming over his minuscule opponent.
With your friend now saved, how will you save yourself?
Hannah shook her head. Don't want to. I'm on garbage duty.
Ha! Not even you can stand up to the power of the brothers.
With balled fists, unflinching, Hannah calmly returned. Maybe, but I'm still pretty sure it'll hurt when I shove this up your ass. She raised a fist surrounded with burning rapture.
You're out of your league, General, and will never get the chance.
Joseph said giddily, swan diving headfirst into a fight. His inordinate claws slashed back and forth as he pursued Hannah out of the bank and across the courtyard. With bursts of rapture from her feet, she nimbly darted between tables and chairs, well out of his grasp, while Joseph charged through like a bulldozer, bellowing his frustrations with each miss. Making him pay for his blinding rage, Hannah landed a roundhouse kick to his face, sending him away at blistering speed into a bungalow with an orange cocktail umbrella-style roof, which exploded on impact. Slow to pick himself back up, Joseph chose instead to remain among the rubble, slamming his fists on the crumpled hut's remains, screaming into the night sky.
Meaningless,
he said, finally rising flat-bodied, like a vampire from its coffin.
You will have to do much better, if you can. After all, what is a celestial without her wings?
Don't need those anymore, Hannah said. Found out I never did.
Then how will you catch us?
With a downward blast, Joseph's skeletal wings flung his massive frame into the air, headed directly toward the south ebb gate.
No! We need more time!
Isaiah fought to move once again, managing to lift his arms only a few inches before they drooped back to dangle at his sides.
Yes, my love,
Chloe said blissfully over his ear. The wings thrashed forward and back, blasting Joseph into the distance like a plastic bag in a hurricane. Isaiah guessed from his vantage point he had already spotted the rings and would be there in less than 30 seconds. That was, until flashes of blue and violet light, like fireballs, struck the monster dead on and sent him spiraling. A thunderous boom followed a gust of rapture on the ground, and Hannah's glowing frame was sent blasting into the sky like a rocket. When she missed her target by a few feet, she managed to reach out and snag Joseph's wing, pulling them both to the ground, as if that same plastic bag were tied to a small but heavy rock. When they disappeared from Isaiah and Chloe's vision, there was a boom, then a puff of smoke and exploding dirt.
What does she think she's doing?
Chloe said with a sneer, lifting Isaiah higher, forming a malosphere around the both of them, just cloudy enough to see through. As she launched them toward the impact site, neither Joseph nor Hannah came into sight.
Where are they?
Chloe called out desperately, landing near the small crater and dissipating the sphere.
You asking me? How am I supposed to know?
Isaiah was just glad the ride was over. They'd landed in the middle of a neighborhood known as Eye's Peak. A predominantly celestial part of town, it was built with precise, simple shapes, and not a degree of variance in any corner.
Thank the goodness it's basically deserted. This fight's starting to look mayhem heavy, and nothing makes Celestials clutch their pearls quite like the destruction of private property.
Before Chloe could ask again, a blast shook the area dead ahead 100 yards, where the powered-up Celestial General and Abyss Behemoth appeared, locked in heated combat. When they crashed through a barrier on the outskirts of a wide courtyard, they split and took a moment to regain their composure before beginning again. Hannah charged to meet Joseph in the middle of the courtyard as his voice boomed, sounding like concrete blocks smashing into one another.
We'll make you regret this. We swear it.
Throwing her right arm bowling style, Hannah released an energy sphere, catching one of Joseph's wings in a brilliant explosion of cobalt blue and violet, sending the beast tumbling head over heels 50 feet, stopped only when he slammed into a blocky lamppost with a clang. Picking himself up quickly this time, he wrapped his claws around the post and tore it from the ground, sending up a shower of sparks. Wielding it like a club, he careened forward, swinging for the fences, knocking away anything in his path. Tables, chairs, benches, and umbrellas were scattered to the wind. After some ducking and dodging, Hannah was able to rip the weapon from his grasp. Swinging the 5-yard pole as easily as a cardboard tube, she punished the monster for losing the weapon. Cracking it against his skull, she knocked Joseph left and right, doing a poor job concealing her smile while she did.
I always did love a good ass-kicking.
But the punishment of the beast came to an end when Joseph vomited a heap of black sludge. Enveloping the pole, it fed on the unearthed metal, crawling towards Hannah's grip, making sick gnashing sounds, forcing her to hurl it away before the sludge could reach her. Joseph laughed with scorn.
If you hold still, it won't hurt so bad. We promise.
The monster followed Hannah into a courtyard inlet, where 3 food carts and rolling freezers sat, locked up indefinitely for the trivium blackout. His wings were on the attack, unrelenting, but had become predictable. As Hannah backed into a corner, she swiftly snatched the left one out of the air and stomped it under her boot, pinning it to the ground, then seized a nearby freezer in both hands. The metal crumpled in her fists as she heaved the silver cube high and slammed it down like a meteor, blasting thunderous shockwaves and chunks of metal, ice, and frozen food all over the courtyard. When the proverbial dust had settled, the beast was gone, and Hannah was already on the lookout.
He's fast, that's for sure.
The sound of beating wings was lost among the misty, smoke-covered shadows on the outskirts, ever nearer and also ever farther. Isaiah tried to help Hannah find the menace, but could sense no concrete evidence of Joseph, only flashes crisscrossing, as the creature's voice called from the darkness.
You still don't remember us, do you?
Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you, because I don't care, Hannah said, keeping her gaze on the move. Something swooped into an alcove behind her, but nothing was explicitly visible, at least from Isaiah's perspective.
We weren't always the Nameless.
Joseph's thunderous and scaly voice continued, now originating from the shadows on the far end of the courtyard.
We, once, like all Archfiend, had a title, a clan. We fought for them, and our enemies were fierce, until the day the Nameless killed his commander on the battlefield, looking into your eyes as he did it.
Hannah hardly reacted. You're right. I do remember you. Hard to forget a deserter. Joseph snickered.
That was the day the Nameless chose for himself a new path. He was simply different. This one wasn't made for war. To serve, like the rest. This one was destined to reach further.
I assumed you were long dead, Hannah said. Hard to believe the scrawny little lizard I saw in the field that day has come this far.
You mock the brothers' trust in us?
He shouted from all directions. Hannah remained still, undisturbed. No, just you. The silence which followed chilled Isaiah even further than his wound. Only a soft wind could be heard, and rustling leaves and paper. When the attack came, he didn't see a thing until it was too late, unable to believe a living thing so large could move with such agility, as though Joseph had been hiding a store of speed and power all along, making the previous skirmish a mere exercise. Hannah reacted, but not soon enough. Amid a flurry of black skeletal wings, Joseph's claws sank deep into her chest, forcing her to call out, gritting her teeth, glaring at him with antipathy. A mist of dark blood appeared on her lips and chin. You cherry-picking piece of shit.
Accept it. Accept what we are. End it now. Die.
Joseph's cadaverous jaw flapped up and down, raving mad. He pressed the claws further, eliciting a scream and showers of Hannah's human form's blood.
Do it, my love,
Chloe cheered over Isaiah's shoulder.
No!
Isaiah found enough energy to manage a shout, fighting for freedom with everything he had, but it remained no use. Chloe quelled his resistance and kept him in check, forcing Isaiah to bear witness to something he couldn't believe he was seeing. He wouldn't. In the tens of thousands of years since he'd met a bright, gifted celestial, with more curiosity and ambition than any he'd ever known, then or since, Isaiah had never seen Hannah lose a fight, as either a Highwind general or a human from on Earth. Her tenacity alone made the thought seem impossible, but this monster was unlike anything they'd ever fought before. Abominable, unstoppable.
And I'm all out of ideas.
The claws within her remained in place as Hannah's breaths grew shorter and staggered. Rapture was leaving her body. Her hands gave up their fight and released their grip, hanging limp. Her chin followed suit, dropping to her chest. The blue glow surrounding her waned. Joseph screamed crazily.
Yes! Go to sleep. Fade.
No, come on. You can do this. Find a way out. Do it, Hannah.
Amid Joseph's cackles, there was a boom, like a vast heartbeat passing over Trivium. The demon's laughter slowed to a crawl, as rapture flooded the area with each growing pulse. A soft glow then began to radiate from within his victim.
What is this?
Joseph shouted. A great swell overcame the area, and with an audible pop, Hannah's eyes opened, beaming with a supreme new luster, nearly stark white. Her neck snapped taut, putting her face to face with the monster. She drew her arms out, palms up, and a voice grew within. A hum at first. The Eve inside her grew exponentially, approaching the potency of Joseph's, swirling and flowing within her, so blinding Isaiah couldn't be sure he was sensing it correctly. All he knew was he liked it.
How?
The demon called with panic, as the wounds in Hannah's chest began to glow a dazzling white and orchid blue. He was now the one struggling for freedom, pulling, straining.
What is this?
His wings fought to gain lift, generating typhoon winds, yet Hannah, and his talons within her, remained firmly in place. She spoke with a voice from another world that was shimmering, resonant, biting, as though passing through halls of diamond before reaching her lips.
This can't go on, Joseph. I won't let it. There are too many souls you've not accounted for. Too many voices more than your own. You don't know what they wish, and don't get to make their choices. I'm ending this madness.
Ours is the only choice to make. Only we can accomplish what others call impossible. Only we have the trust of the brothers.
Joseph roared.
You sure about that?
She responded, calm as ice, her piping voice resonating through Isaiah's bones.
You are a child. The brothers are forever.
Joseph finished. Hannah laughed once.
You're the one trying to get rid of forever.
The air became rigidly cold. A mass of blue and indigo rapture churned around her and Joseph, propagating and condensing, soon like a raging, donut-shaped waterfall, obscuring the figures within. Time and space themselves seemed to be going haywire as the force expanded. A high-pitched sound broke out, like an iceberg breaking free into the ocean, and a flash of light engulfed Trivium, as though a star were born in the courtyard, as luminous as 10 shifts. Debris soared in slow motion, so affected by the power of Highwind. Through the curtain of rapture, Isaiah saw a gleaming figure, matched by the enormous, shadowed silhouette of Joseph beyond it. When the murky air around the figures cleared, the Midolian laid eyes on something he'd never seen before. Hannah's clothes and leather jacket remained, dusty as ever, as well as her dark hair, billowing in a wind she herself was producing. But the rest of her had become a warrior of radiant blue gemstone, her skin transmuted to something midway between flesh and celestial. Tough as hardened steel, malleable as rubber, glowing similar to a luminous creature of the deep ocean, she radiated sparks of pure violet energy, the most potent form of rapture, akin to the blue end of an earthly flame. Poised below Joseph, surrounded by bedlam, Hannah's stone face wore tranquility. Isaiah would have been speechless with or without a sword through his gut, having witnessed his friend somehow amass enough rapture to transform, and in doing so, create an unearthed human-celestial hybrid, unlike any ever seen in this world or the next. Purged citizens of Highwind could become celestials again over many months in the changing chambers, but this was not that. Her wings had not returned, and she was not a walking colossus. The glow around her was as intense as if she had fully transformed into her original self, but no such thing had been done. From what Isaiah could tell, this concentration of energy had made Hannah more powerful than even the oldest, strongest celestials of the Magnus Council.
How in the world? Not even Michael had this amount of juice.
Joseph reared back, shrieking, his claws all but burned away from the transformation, gaping at his missing digits and what had become of his opponent.
This is... What have you done? This can't be.
It's what you've done.
Hannah's crystalline voice thundered.
You will lose, because creatures who think like you, the cowering, the craven, will always defeat themselves.
Craven, you will be the one who dies today, not us. We promise.
Joseph flexed and screamed, and his claws began to heal. But the demon didn't wait for them to finish, sounding determined to make her suffer.
The brothers won't allow it.
So it began, with a snarl. Hannah landed an uppercut, sending the monster's head sprawling, sounding like a mountain had punched an island. Joseph's wings instinctively jammed into the ground, dragging through concrete to steady him, and he returned the favor, charging like an obsidian bull, sending Hannah into the sky. She fell to Trivium like a ton of bricks, unable to guide herself, and landed directly on top of him, sending up so much debris and expelling so much raw power, Isaiah lost track of her and Joseph. Finally, he caught sight of them when the fight exploded through a corner bistro and into the street with a flurry of glass, metal, and napkins. The winged beast slashed Hannah's face, sounding like pickaxes glancing off basalt. Yet with each hit, she only seemed to gleam brighter and push harder. The bout had become a boxing match, heads down, trading hits. Isaiah was watching from the nosebleed section, but the athletes were nearly impossible to keep an eye on as they drifted behind pillars and dwellings, sometimes as fast as the sound of their blows. One who seemed particularly surprised was Chloe, still breathing down Isaiah's neck. She'd always been canny, ever ready, an effective Medolian, usually 1 or 2 steps ahead of everyone else. But even she could not have planned for what Hannah had just done. Through the blade she'd skewered him with, Isaiah could sense tiny quivers in her hands. Worried sounds were let slip every time the demon was knocked down. Her confidence was fading, her belief in Joseph waning. As the fight drew on, each combatant dazzling brighter than ever, hitting as hard as a dozen semi-trucks. One particularly vicious hit knocked Joseph's head back so far it nearly snapped off, releasing a plume of black and green ooze. The demon's head dangled between his wings, hanging by a sick mess of tendons and cartilage. At first it wasn't clear if he would fall over or not, until the laughter started. Low and mucus-ridden at first, then echoing broader from within the wet charcoal body. The flesh remaining on his mutilated corpse vibrated and shook as though stricken with a seizure, and without the help of his claws, Joseph's head seeped back over his shoulders, snapping into place with a chattering crunch. The laughter ceased as he swiveled his head back and forth, testing the fit.
If the kid wasn't dead yet, he definitely is now.
Joseph erupted with laughter once more. The wings then snapped out triumphantly. The Nameless exposed his chest.
Do you finally get it? Transform again. Do it 1,000 more times. It won't matter. What we have flowing inside us cannot be stopped. We are the hand of destiny.
Hannah didn't move, though she seemed perfectly ready to continue. Even with her stoic expression, Isaiah knew the look on her face. She wasn't tired or defeated. She was simply running out of ideas. With all its ups and downs, the battle had largely been in her favor, and yet She could not find a way to put him down for good. Joseph, it seemed, would keep coming. The nightmare would never stop.
What are we going to do?
When Hannah did not attack for several moments, Joseph scoffed.
Fine.
In one powerful thrust, his wings jetted him skyward.
Don't worry. We're not leaving yet. But when we get back, you better not be here.
Breaking away, he took to the sky, leaving a streak of red and black smoke behind. But Hannah did not give chase, and instead planted her feet and waited. Once he'd run himself out a good distance, now only a dot against the Pillowmene Mountains, Joseph swooped up in a horseshoe formation into what must have been near the Trivium atmosphere, before turning down and diving like an Onyx aircraft. Isaiah felt Chloe react through the cutlass, whispering, "No!" Seeing the creature swoop down to destroy them was terrifying. No other way to put it. But when Isaiah looked at Hannah, hoping to see her powering up some sort of super attack, strong enough to make Joseph sorry he'd ever started this mess, he was met with her gaze instead. No longer blank and afflicted with too much raw power to appear human. Her original brilliant blue irises had returned.
What's she doing?
For some stupid, god-awful reason, she was facing Isaiah, and it took him less than a second to know something was wrong simply by the look in her eyes. They were smiling. In fact, she seemed suddenly more at peace than he had seen her in a long time, as though ready to take a bow, knowing she'd given her all.
No, Hannah. Don't you think it?
She looked away and faced the oncoming attack before Isaiah could give any kind of reaction, probably knowing he would make some attempt to stop her.
We're done holding back.
Joseph's voice fell from the heavens, followed by his body zooming in at breakneck speed.
This is it.
I know,
Hannah said, so quietly only Isaiah could have heard it. Clenching her fists, she knelt and sprang into the air. With a blast of rapture to help her along, she launched like a mortar shell set to collide with the incoming jet, locked in a game of chicken. Isaiah then spotted the two tiny faces of Felix and Bennett tucked into the shadows between two structures across the courtyard, having just arrived. Their distant eyes were locked onto the fight with a desperate sense of hope matching Isaiah's. When Joseph and Hannah collided like satellites in orbit with a thunderous boom, a ring of energy tore across Trivium, releasing enough power to keep them from plummeting. The Celestial and Demon were locked together, their fingers intertwined, foreheads mashed against one another. Two orbs of pure Eve blasted into existence, surrounding the figures, bathing them in light, reacting like sodium and water. One, blue and violet, surrounded and protected Hannah. The other, black and red, encircled Joseph. Rapture and Abyss wrestled for dominance, neither willing to give an inch. Hannah and the beast roared, giving it everything they had. If not for their elevation, the area would have been decimated by the energy they expelled. Tables, chairs, and anything in the courtyard not bolted down blew away, crashing through windows and doors of the buildings remaining on the outskirts.
Don't know how much more of this the city can take.
Pumping his huge ears with Malos, Isaiah could hear the combatants speak. Joseph bellowed,
Once you are gone, There will be no one left to stop us. The brothers will be awoken. Everything will end.
No.
Hannah said, her voice penetrating the chaos.
Life doesn't give up. Life doesn't give in.
As she powered it up like she never had before, her hands blazed with blue fire, searing Joseph's claws, pulling a scream out of the brute.
There will always be life.
Joseph matched her, note for note, as the orbs surrounding them expanded to twice their original size. Deep red and blue lightning ripped across the sky. Of all things to suddenly feel in that moment, Isaiah was not expecting relief to be one of them, as Chloe's cutlass blade was pulled from his gut, and he was finally free to collapse to his knees.
No! You can't!
Chloe screamed at the storm of Eve in low orbit, suddenly dashing away on foot, having forgotten all about Isaiah. Try as she might, she couldn't get the demon's attention. His tug of war with the newly ascended Hannah was taking everything he had, even more than the stones would allow.
Stop this madness!
Chloe screamed into the blitz, using a Malos shield to survive the onslaught of power.
You'll destroy yourself and the brothers!
Isaiah leaned on his cane and held his gut, trying to stop the bleeding, barely able to keep conscious enough to watch the action, let alone make it to any kind of safe distance. Judging by the attack Hannah and Joseph were brewing, he doubted there was such a thing. With one final push, she released a monstrous scream with a voice so awesome it drowned out Joseph completely. Isaiah fantasized it broke through the realms of unearth, letting every creature of the eve hear exactly what it was taking to save them. The orbs grew uncontrollably and soon overtook everything. For the briefest of moments, they found their zenith, before the sphere of rapture suddenly multiplied exponentially, and the energy was released. Isaiah had no real memory of the explosion itself, or the moments immediately after. All he remembered was a scream, that of his friend, giving her all just before everything seemed to invert. White was black, fast was slow, up was down. A moment later, when Isaiah felt reality calling, the first sensation that came back to him was the feeling of the wind. A torrid storm was flowing around him, then relented, becoming a gust, then a breeze, before everything finally calmed, and Isaiah suddenly thought he was lying in the tall green grass of one of his favorite lakes up north, near Yellowknife, Canada. Nameless, because only he knew it existed. Convinced he'd been asleep for hours underneath a tall, gangly cedar, listening to the frogs and bugs whizzing by, Isaiah imagined he were in one of those peaceful moments an hour or so before sunrise, when the songbirds were just waking in the trees, and the loudest sound was a sudden draft whistling through the thicket. He swore he could hear the fish jump in the pond before it settled back to stillness. Then the water was disturbed. The whole lake was splashing, boiling, turning a fiery crimson, and the remainder of reality came crashing back. Pain. There was a lot of it. He couldn't see.
Think I'm trapped under something.
Isaiah lifted his cane and pressed forward, saving what little Malos he had for what might be around the corner. When he fought to the surface, he found only shadow and dust. The smell was putrid, the air so hard to breathe he started to choke. With no sign of the skyward orbs or their energy, which was perfectly fine, Isaiah picked himself up, holding the hole in his gut, which had already begun to heal, but needed plenty more time. Marching through the devastation without bothering to brush himself off, he passed through puffs of white smoke rising from burning sediment. At the center of the chaos, only ash remained, drifting aimlessly through the air, as though in a vacuum. Standing on the open, barren field, he felt utterly alone, on an alien world without a friend in the universe. There was no physical sign of Bennett or Felix, though their Eves were still around, as well as Chloe's. They were out there somewhere. But Joseph was nowhere to be found, nor was Hannah. Isaiah was glad there was no sign of the fiend and his devilry, and the stones of Gehenna seemed to have gone back to sleep. But no matter where he looked, no matter how desperately, he couldn't feel a trace of his friend. Her light had gone out.